Okay, so good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good, I don't know, buonasera, I don't know, to everybody who's here. Welcome to the ninth talk in the International Language Coaching Association Expert 2020 series. As you can see, it's hosted by one of our founding members each month. And our mission is to support language teachers, language professionals, and practitioners all over the world so that they can gain insight into the wonderful world of coaching and coaching related mindsets, practices, tools, techniques, methodology, etc. Today we're going to be here roughly 1 hour. We'll see how the Q&A works out. And if you want to find out more information about how ILCA can benefit you, then please go onto our website. And yeah, that's all from me for now. And of course, we've got amazing courses, but a little bit about that at the end. So Analia, can you move on and I'll introduce you, okay? So this is Analia Duarte, who's going to be talking about observing and attention, which is something often not in the center of our focus or our attention, so to say, when we're talking about teaching or training or coaching for that matter. And I'm looking at my notes here. Analia has an amazing background. So she's a graduate teacher. She has a BA in English, MA in ELT and Applied Linguistics and Organizational Psychology. She's an ICF certified ontological coach, and she'll be finishing up her degree in ontological leadership this December. So that's huge news. So lifelong learning, I guess. And she also does soft skills trainings, works with competencies in business, specializes in intercultural communication, and has been delivering business English training for quite a few years now. And she created the LEAPS learning methodology. She's the owner and director of LEAP's Innovative English Methodology, which is in Argentina. Am I correct? Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
In Buenos Aires.
Oh, in Buenos Aires. All right. And she's also a teacher, trainer, speaker in conferences for all sorts of language acquisition, adult learning, business English themes. And she's a university lecturer too. So is there anything that I've left out?
That is fine.
Great. Okay. So I'm handing it over to
picture.
you, and it's our honor to have you talk to us here today. And wonderful. Looking forward to it. So all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So hello, everyone. Nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces. And I know that some people will be watching afterwards on YouTube. So we will be looking into attention today. That's why the title of this talk is Looking to See. We cannot see unless we look, all right? Mm-hmm. So to begin with, let's imagine that someone visits a doctor because of some fever or some shortness of breath or some cough, and she enters the yellow office. And the doctor diagnoses her with a mild case of bacterial infection and prescribes some antibiotics. Immediately after, the person goes to the blue office, and this is what happens. Another doctor sees her. She says that she has some kind of imbalance between energies. She's being prescribed some acupuncture sessions, also some water, and to go home for 2 weeks. Who did the lady see in these cases? What's the difference? Can you type it in the chat box?
Okay.
I'm not seeing the chat. Maybe Gabriela, you can read out so that I don't go back to the chat box.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
So what answer do we have there? Who did she see? Can you read it loud?
Yeah, okay, so we've got one, Western medicine versus naturopath. So somebody who is versed in that. Mine is like a general practitioner versus an Oriental or Chinese therapist. I'm not quite sure. So that's something that I had. And if anyone else is writing in the chat box, please send now.
Fantastic. So who of the two is right and who is wrong? Can we say that one is right, one is wrong? And what may this have to do with language acquisition, with coaching, language coaching, with communication coaching? So what I want to bring in is this idea that we live in interpretive worlds. And this is one of the principles of coaching, one of the most important principles of coaching, which means that reality doesn't exist. A teacher and a coach will see different things, the same way as a traditional medical doctor and a Chinese doctor see different things. The same patient, the same symptoms, they see different things. Because we are conditioned by our mental models. We cannot see reality as it is, but the mental models we have condition the way we see reality. Mm-hmm. Which takes us to the fact that we have facts which are neutral. Even COVID is neutral. We make interpretations about the facts. The interpretations we make, the meaning we assigned to those interpretations enable us to take some actions and not others. And these take us to some results. So the results we have are a result of the actions we take. They are the results of interpretations we make in life. So this means that when we look at something, we see with much more than the eyes. And this is why I'm bringing in this picture here, because this is like taking your car to the mechanic. He opens the hood, knows where and how to intervene. In my case, I wouldn't be able to make any interpretation of this at all. I'm totally ignorant. But he knows what to pay attention to. And because he knows, he can see. And because he can see, he can intervene wisely. He takes decisions. So what this means is that the more distinctions we have, the bigger our world is, because we can see more. From the coaching perspective and from the psycholinguistic perspective, we see that we are not able to attend to X unless we know where to focus our attention on. We need to know in order to see. And this happens to teachers, it happens to coaches, it happens to human beings in general. All of us suffer from the same things and undergo the same process. So probably from the world of photography, we can draw some lessons. Let's see if I can make it visual. Photography works with this tension all the time, because the tension figure and ground, which is always present in photography, comes from the fact that a photographer goes around like kind of trimming the world, focusing. They focus on a plane and they blur everything else. So our vision, our human vision, recognizes figure on a ground, and the ground is always behind. The figure is at the front, it's clearer, it's neater, it's more accurate, it's like closer to the observer, and the ground is farther away. Which means that what we observe, what we look at, tends to become figure. What we don't look at automatically, willingly or unwillingly, goes to the background, goes to the ground. And most importantly, for our brain, everything that is connected with the figure might be not will, but might be remembered. Nothing that is to be remembered will be happening in the ground. In coaching, we see we can only act on what we can see. So let's draw an analogy. We will say we can act on what is figure for us. And this is not only in terms of teaching and language learning, but in life in general. So as, let's say, language and communication coaches, we have to play all the time with this thing about figure and ground. What for? To maximize the learner's learning journey, the learning experience. Okay, and we can ask other what fors. What for? So that they can do what they couldn't do before. What for? To attain better results. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let me bring in an iconic case study in second language acquisition. This is Wes's case. Let's imagine that you get a new client, and this client, Wes, says, I'm never learning. I'm only just listening them talk. So what can we assume about Wes? And what type of predictions will you start making about him in terms of his learning, in terms of his attitude to learning, in terms of what he prioritizes? So start picturing him in your mind, and I will tell you who Wes was. Wes was a Japanese artist. He was 33 years old when he migrated from Japan to Hawaii to set up a painting business. He had a very strong professional identity. And here I want you to stop and think about your clients. Many times, not to say all the time, our clients have a strong professional identity, and they're only kind of lagging behind in English, but they are very strong professionally already. He was someone who he integrated really well into the local artistic community. So from the psycholinguistic point of view, we say he was acculturated. That was not a problem for him. He mingled very well. Very interestingly, he had no language education before, nothing at all. Mm-hmm. And he was a great conversationalist. He has what we're calling in psycholinguistics, WTC, willingness to communicate, which means that not only was he motivated, but he even initiated conversations. He was very gregarious. And at the beginning, when you read the case, which is a very long case, people say that they will walk away from him because they wanted to avoid speaking with him, because his English was so rusty and so difficult to follow that at the beginning, the community didn't include him. But as time went by, this didn't happen anymore. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is that his accuracy never ever improved, even though he spoke English between 75 and 90% of the time. He was immersed in English with no accuracy improvement at all. Mm-hmm. He didn't use any cognitive or metacognitive strategy, which means that not even once was he looking up information in a dictionary or even rephrasing. The only thing he did was to repeat or shout. When people didn't understand, he shouted, as if speaking in a louder voice made a clearer message, okay? So the interesting thing is that his grammar was totally stagnated. He didn't use, for example, ED forms. He marked things lexically. So he said, for example, yesterday I paint. He only used irregular verbs, which is quite understandable because they are the first verbs to be learned. We learn the irregular verbs before the regular verbs. He overused ing form, especially with activity verbs like painting, touching, training, okay? Mm-hmm. Let's read this dialogue where the researcher talks to him in order to try to understand how his brain works. And he says, so what's the difference between paint and painting? Wes said, well, if I go to the exhibition, I say paint, but I start painting means I do it, not finish. Yeah, okay, sort of. So what's the difference between think and thinking? I am think means now. I am thinking means later. So he had his own way of communicating. And he
something on the phone.
everyone,
I want to watch this for a bit.
He expected everyone to follow him. Okay, he didn't rephrase. He didn't stop to reflect on the way in which he talks. So what do you think was the missing piece in his effort to communicate? You can type it in the chats. And Gabriela, I would appreciate it if you can read out one or two answers. What was the missing piece in his effort to learn the second language?
Okay, so just type in what's missing into the chat box and I'll read out your answers as they come in, okay, as I see them. So what's missing for Wes, right? I love the story, by the way. Yeah, one word here, attention. Anything else from the
attention
other?
To what? Let's go deeper there. Attention to what?
Attention to what, Maria? To form.
To form, absolutely.
Attention.
He had no sensitivity to form or drive to pay attention to the language codes, which means that he over-invested his attention in message content over message form. And that was the problem. He never stopped to look at his language. No attention was paid to how he said things. He just paid attention to what he says. By the way, when the researcher asked people in the community what they thought about his English, how they would rate his English, they said, fantastic, no problem. Do you know who were the only people who didn't, let's say, rate his English very highly?
Nope.
Teachers of English. But for normal people, let's say for the rest of the community, his English was okay. And before I move on here, I want to make a point because this is very important today with ELF, with English as a lingua franca, because today ELF is the norm. So we can say that the West may be seen as the English speaker he needed to be for his particular social context. In fact, there was nothing intrinsically wrong in it, okay? However, there are cases when our clients have to be accurate. Start thinking about in which cases your clients need to look for accuracy, for precision. I can think about international exams. I can think about, for example, people climbing up the corporate ladder because the way we talk impacts on our public identity. I wouldn't imagine someone who is, let's say, a big fish in a company talking like Wes. Also, when intelligibility is at stake, it's not the same to say you may be right as to say you are right. So working on intelligibility sometimes does connect with accuracy. And there's one more thing that I want to mention, which has to do with negotiation of meaning, with interaction. So in some cases, working on accuracy, even though we are living in a world where English as a lingua franca is the norm, working on accuracy, there are some areas where it still remains a priority, at least in my view. So the reason why I'm bringing this in is because I'm meeting someone, because this study was like the kernel of the noticing hypothesis. And for language and communication coaches, this is tremendously important because this proves that positive attitude is okay, but not enough. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And an optimal environment is desirable, but it's not enough. Because learning an additional language in adulthood will happen only if the learner actively engages in the processing of the input he or she receives, and if these 5 elements are present: attitude, input, interaction, output, and attention. These are the 5 ingredients which the literature in second language acquisition today shows that have to be present for learning a second language to happen. In other words, we need to bring to figure what we need our learners to pay attention to. If that doesn't happen, things will remain in the ground and no learning takes place there. No language learning takes place there. Is that clear? Yep. So we will do a game. I need to go to my stopwatch here, which I will show to you.
Okay.
Let me share the screen. Can you share? Can you see the stopwatch there?
No, you have to stop. Yeah, here we've got it. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay.
So, do you have pen and a piece of paper?
Sure.
Okay, fantastic. So the instruction is like this. You will be timing yourselves 3 times, and it's very important that you take down notes of your timings. I will give you 3 instructions. I will say ready, steady, go. When I say go, you start. And when you finish, please look up and take down notes of your timing. All right?
Okay.
Are we okay?
Yeah, okay.
Fine. So the first activity is you will write down on your piece of paper the numbers from 1 to 10. So ready, steady, go.
Okay, we might be ready.
Number 2, I want you to write down the letters A to J in alphabetical order. A to J in alphabetical order. So ready, steady, go.
Okay.
Okay. And last, I want you to write down an alternate sequence. 1 number, 1 letter. For example, A1, B2, C3, from 1 to 10, from A to J. Ready, steady, go. Are we done?
Yeah, should be.
Okay, can you type in the chat your 3 results? And let's see what we have there.
Okay.
Stop sharing, share. 4.5, 5.16, 6.5, 5.35, 11.41. So what pattern starts emerging here? 7.49, 5.35, 17. 5, 3, 17.63, 8, 9, 22. So what do you see here?
Okay.
You can open your mic and share your views. We are not that many. So what do you see here?
Okay, anyone?
There is a clear pattern. There seems to be a pattern.
Okay, anyone to share? Would anyone like to say something here? You can just unmute yourself and share what you see with the patterns here. Anyone? No?
Okay, let me tell you what. Okay, Kari. Go ahead.
Okay.
It definitely took us longer. I mean, the last exercise when we had to, you know, just one number, one letter. So that in my case, it took me 23 seconds. So
As opposed to
5.
okay. So 3 times.
And I was actually I was using this, so it's not
That's okay.
it's maybe not the same, but still, it was a huge difference.
Okay.
Which means, and I did this on purpose to show you, visually show you, that we cannot multitask. In fact, we can, at a high cost.
Yeah. Can I?
Sure.
Yeah. One thing I was just looking at the last. So it's basically the last one, which is the most complex of the tasks that you gave us. And that's where the numbers really surged. So we had very, very high numbers. What I noticed was that mine, for some reason, is relatively short, but I hijacked the project because I wrote A, B, C, D, F, G. I went from A to J, and then I wrote the numbers from 1 to 10. So I wasn't I was cheating in a way.
You cheated. Yeah, this was not my instruction. Okay. Anyhow, it serves the purpose of showing that if we are orderly working on numbers, on letters, we are much faster and neater and efficient. Okay. Yeah. And this, I want to bring this in because at least in my opinion, this is tremendously important. Why? Because we cannot do, this is what neuroscience shows us now, we cannot do simultaneously many things at the same time and maintain efficiency. Of course we can, but then this is to the detriment of efficiency. In fact, there is a myth that we don't use all our brain. But science says today that we do use the complete possibilities of our brain. The problem is that we can only use 2% when we are multitasking. So just 2% can be used in simultaneous tasks. So start thinking about what we do in our classes, in our sessions, with our learners, with our clients, because in my opinion, a very wise language and communication coaching decision is to help our clients use their neurons more wisely, more effectively. And I want to draw an analogy with psycholinguistics. Meaning and form are 2 competing mechanisms. They compete all the time in our brain. And the winner is meaning, 100% of the time. So a trainer or a teacher who asks learners to be accurate and fluent at the same time is asking for the impossible. Because that's too demanding for the brain. The brain cannot pay attention to the 2 at the same time. So for attention to facilitate learning, we might first have to learn what to attend to. So we therefore hypothesize that a bidirectional interaction exists between attention and learning, a bidirectional interaction. So attention becomes an ally to leveraging L2 learning. If we want L2 learning to happen, we need to work on attention, because something that is not seen is not learned. This is a kind of tattoo we can make on our bodies, okay? So I will now show you a video. Yeah. Let me see if I can. Make sure that I'm sharing computer sound. So the only task you have to do is watch the video. Pay attention to the video. It's 3 minutes long. Okay. Can you confirm if it is seen and heard okay?
Today we're going to play a game specifically designed to test your spatial awareness. Meet the Brain Games Double Dutch team. What does jumping rope have to do with the brain? Well, double Dutch requires off-the-chart spatial awareness. And today, these kids are going to help us test yours. For this game, all you have to do is keep track of the number of times that either of the girls in green jumps. You'll count each time one of them lands a jump, like this.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
As you can see, these jumpers are pretty quick on their feet, so you're going to have to pay attention to keep up. When the whistle blows, start counting. Ready? Go. So, how many jumps did the green team make? Did you say 38? If so, you agreed with 40% of our test audience. Now, some of you may be onto us, but for those of you who aren't, did you happen to notice anything else going on during the double Dutch? Maybe a giant chicken strolling right through the middle of the set and doing a funky chicken dance? Now, some of you may have missed that funky chicken, but many of you probably saw it, and that's okay, because the chicken was just there to distract you too. Here's the real question. What color was the wall behind the double Dutch game? Here's a hint. It wasn't the same color at the end as it was when they started jumping. The back wall was changing color the entire time, from bright blue to bright red. Nearly everyone misses it. But why? It turns out there's far too much information coming in through the eyes at any given moment for the brain to fully process all of it. As a result, the brain has to act like a spotlight, focusing our attention on some parts of the scene but not others. Now, most of you were probably paying attention to the jumpers, and some of you may have suspected that something strange was going to happen, and so you saw the chicken. But you probably weren't paying attention to the back wall. And what we don't pay attention to, we don't see. And hey, for those of you who managed to catch everything so far, did you notice that we also swapped the rope turners out halfway through? Gotcha.
Okay. So, what did you think about this? Can you type it in the chat or open your mics?
Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful experiment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a very interesting experience, that's for sure. So if there's anything you want to put in the chat box or say, then now's the time. And there are two types of focus, spotlight and reflector. So the one that really zooms in and the one that has this kind of very general, and it depends which you want to be using. Okay, Kathy's saying the brain is processing and may take time or not see other stimuli.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so this is not seeing, not knowing. That's kind of what's happening.
Not seeing, not knowing, not learned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So the reason why I'm bringing this is because this can be replicated in second language acquisition areas. Because if we want to, let's say, drive the development of a second language, of an additional language, when we have one mother tongue already wired in our brain, we need to pay attention and notice. So let's beware of simply talking in English, because that is not something that is necessarily conducive to what we say in psycholinguistics, interlanguage stretching, because we need the learner to attend to features of the input. Now, why do we have these attentional mechanisms? By the way, this is not species specific, because dogs have these mechanisms. Horses turn the two ears in different directions. And we all have the same, we offer the same solution to the same problem. And the problem is saturation of information. the presenter says something along the lines, along these lines there. So what I want to show here is that the brain, the second language learner's brain, and in fact, human beings' brains are bombarded all the time with information. In fact, our 5 senses transmit millions of information bits per second, millions. And at the beginning, that's not a problem because the brain can process those messages, can use different neurons to process those messages with no difficulty. The problem comes when time goes by and it becomes utterly impossible for the brain to deal with all of them with equal depth because it gets tired. And this has to do with the fact that the resources that the brain, that all our brains have, are not enough. So the brain becomes kind of picky, as the picture shows there, because it has to decide what information is more convenient to be attended to, because it can't pay attention to everything at the same time. And the brain decides where to allocate resources. What's the priority, okay? If we transfer that to language learning, what is the priority when we are communicating? Meaning, exactly, meaning. It's not form. People don't care about how they say what they say. They just want to get meaning across. So I want to bring in here Peter Skian. Peter used to say that he takes it to be natural for human beings to prioritize meaning. And in the case of second language speakers, it follows that when there is communicative pressure of any sort, meaning will be a priority and form will be something of a luxury. So in other words, this means that learners have difficulty in attending to meaning and form simultaneously. They need to prioritize. It's one or the other one. And prioritizing form will be possible only if they don't have to devote all their attentional resources to communicating meaning. And this has been studied in second language acquisition. It's the so-called trade-off hypothesis. Learners are all the time trading in form and meaning, form and meaning. So this means that attention to one aspect of language production, for example, meaning, has a detrimental effect on the other one, for example, form. So as language trainers, we have to be super careful as to what it is that we want learners to focus on. It's unfair to demand both from them. The brain simply collapses. It can't do that. So another tattoo for your bodies is attention is a limited psycholinguistic resource. It is limited. So we have to make very wise decisions when we are training. If you need your learners to have their attentional resources focused on form for some reason, okay, give them a context that they're very familiar with so that they have extra resources to allocate to how they say what they say, okay? Because this selection is fundamental to learning. Kumara Vadivelu says, language learning entails a non-linear, parallel, interactive process rather than a linear, serial, additive process. And this is very important. There has to be recursiveness. It's not a course book line, let's say. I teach A, they learn A. Learning is another thing, and it implies this spiraling. It's a process where we need to accompany, okay? So I want to bring in something from the world of organizational psychology here, which I think is very important. And it connects with attention in more than one ways. As language professionals, I think that we have to really understand that there is a difference between input availability and input accessibility. Because input availability is something that we can control, quote unquote. But input accessibility belongs to the realm of the learner. It's not about us, it's about them. So the issue is, what buttons do we touch to pave the way for more quality learning to happen? For the learner to be able to access to certain input more and more, to become more effective. So here I want to bring in the Peter Drucker. I don't know if you have ever heard this name, but he was the father of contemporary organizational management, who made this wonderful distinction between efficiency and effectiveness. They sound similar, but they are not. Efficiency is doing things right, whereas effectiveness is doing the right thing. Not necessarily the doing it right, but doing the right thing. One of my coaches in my coaching school used to say, let me turn this into English. He said, beware of doing the unnecessary extraordinarily well and falling in love with it. Okay, so this means that efficiency is irrelevant until we work on the right thing. Mm-hmm. And of course, the question will be, okay, which is the right thing in psycholinguistic terms and in coaching terms? Of course, I don't have the answer, but I would say, to begin with, respect mental models. Validate that your learners have their own lenses through which they see the world. I would also say, and let me bring in here Evan Frendo. Those of you who come from the world of business English might know who I'm talking about. Evan says all the time, those of us working with people who work in company settings should be careful not to fall in the trap of confusing talking about versus doing. So one thing is to talk about the language of banking. Another thing is to see how banking people carry out conversations. They're two different things. Okay, so this distinction about and doing is something that, in my view, also reflects this right thing. Then I strongly recommend you all to get into to investigate the developmental sequences of acquisition, because there we have very juicy information which shows what the brain learns before other items. So for example, simple past is learned before simple present developmentally. So if you're working with a client who is still struggling with simple past, do not insist on simple present, because this person is not developmentally ready for that yet. So knowing the sequence of acquisition helps a lot. It's a very powerful tool, okay? Mm-hmm. I would also say that another thing we can watch for in order to work on the right thing is the concept of error, because I think it's high time we kind of abandoned this binary view of right or wrong, because many times the answer is it depends. It depends on the context. It depends on what the client needs to use language for. It depends on the genre. So I think that when we start fine-tuning our practice into the right thing, we abandon this right-wrong distinction and we just focus on intelligibility as a priority. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you think of any other one that comes to your mind in order to think of the right things to do?
One word that comes to my mind is relevance and priority. So if it's relevant for the client, then it's probably going to become something they want to be effective in. So that would kind of go down the same path, so to say. So if it's really relevant, if it's something they really need to focus on, then they're going to take steps to move forward with it.
Absolutely. Which means that you are teaching the person and not the what's on the agenda.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the first thing. Yeah.
So I encourage you to explore within your context what this right thing is. Okay, but what I want you to go home with is this distinction between effectiveness and efficiency, because it's important to understand the difference so that this carries into our sessions. I think that we need to talk about this because we need to understand that clients hire us for a reason. They have a clear what for. And the what for tends to be, if they hire a language coach, it's not to learn passive voice. They want to communicate in English, okay? Regardless of the rules, regardless of a course book index. But it's very important not to confuse experience with learning. Because you might have someone going to classes for years and years, and the real progress made is not proportional to the investments of time and money. This is why I am bringing in this wonderful quote by Alan Fletcher, who says, "Beware of a man who says he has 20 years experience when what he should be saying is he has 1 year's experience repeated 20 times. So what is it that we have our clients pay attention to so that they impact on their interlanguage developments and they learn? Because these people are people who need English to get things done. They are the ones who talk the companies into being. Because they are language beings. We are languaging every waking minute of our lives. They don't care about third person singular s. They want to get things done. And this is why we need to have a clear understanding that simply attending sessions is not synonymous with learning. For learning to happen, there has to be transformation, there has to be change. So in other words, we have to deliver on the promise that we make, the promise of effectiveness in Peter Drucker's terms, which in fact connects with productivity. And this is why I included the formula of productivity there, because this is a managerial formula for productivity, because it means achieving more using the least possible resources. And to achieve that, attention is where everything starts. That's the entry door. Someone is joining. That's the entry door to memory. If we want learners to have information in their long-term memory, before long-term memory, we have short-term memory. And the entry door to short-term memory is attention. Necessarily, they have to pay attention. Okay? So to round off, let me tell you that my purpose when I prepared this presentation was not to bring a different point of view, which is that one of second language acquisition, which in fact I touched on. I can only speak about my experience. I mean, the only thing I can speak about is my own experience. I have been swimming the waters of second language acquisition for almost 3 decades already, 1998, I think it was. In 2008, I de-specialized on purpose, and I went into organizational psychology, and only, I think it was 3 years ago, coaching came to my life. And in between, I have been exploring all types of disciplines, really diverse disciplines, yoga, meditation, tribal dances, horse-assisted therapies, very diverse worlds. And I believe that this is what has contributed to widening my view of the human communication phenomenon. And this is the reason why I insist all the time, and those of us whom I train, the teachers I train, hear me say this all the time, I really suggest going beyond teaching. Because when we go beyond, I'm not saying that being a teacher is not important. It's absolutely necessary because it gives you an understanding of how language is acquired. But then, in my view, at this time, we need to go beyond teaching per se, because this allows us not to collect different points of view, but rather views of the points. So my proposal is this one, is that we integrate different views of the point. And the point is, of course, the human communication phenomenon. It seems to me that today the conjunction is no longer or, it's rather and. So the world needs an integration of anything we do. In this case, we are talking about language, but this is something that affects all professionals in all fields. We need to nurture our views by drawing on different disciplines, the ones that make sense to us, but drawing on different disciplines. Because this is where I see that just teaching the language fails. It falls behind in this day and age, because adults in company settings in particular, and adults in general, do not need teachers of English. Teachers and the world of companies are not a good fit, in my view. They don't match. Of course, it's valuable and necessary to be a teacher, but I think we need upskilling if we want to play a bigger game and be up to what is needed from us. In fact, someone is joining.
Yeah, I know.
In fact, one of my current mentors, he's a leading figure in disruptive management in Argentina. He says, it takes a long journey to say the opposite of what many people say. But then there comes a time when we no longer question the status quo. We don't want to evangelize others anymore, and we let people choose where they want to stand, okay? It's about choosing. So in fact, every language professional is free to choose in which direction to go. I believe that the direction the world needs us to go today is definitely one which goes well beyond the teaching of the language. And this is where I find that coaching, communication coaching, and related disciplines make a big difference, because the short term is the long term we're late for. Let me repeat it. The short term is the long term we are late for. So many times we are invited to change the direction of our attention as professionals. And we have a choice to make. It's up to us to make the choice or not. My interpretation today is that it's kind of like the future is inviting us to kind of lean on it and bring this to life. So the suggestion is to let the future reach us. In my view, this goes beyond teaching the language. We are extremely necessary in today's world because the world needs to communicate, and English is the lingua franca by definition. So adding coaching tools, in my view, helps people make this leap And it helps us make of our value propositions a more treasured value proposition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for those, yeah.
So let the future reach us.
Hopefully. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for those who joined in the past few minutes, yes, there will be a recording where we're recording what's happening right now, so you have the opportunity to see. And yeah, we're seeing some applause, so I'm giving a real live applause here. So fantastic talk here from Analia Duarte, and thank you very much for, I think I can say in the name of all of us, it's been very, very eye-opening. For me, definitely, it's been a journey into a completely different approach to coaching. Yes, Karina's saying thank you very much. Excellent webinar. I agree. And I think this could be the time when we can ask any questions that we would like to from Anali, if that's okay. And so you can write it in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and just ask anything related to the slides, any information that you heard, or if something was perhaps unclear. Is that okay? Right, okay. Right.
I see someone raising his hand or her hands.
Okay, so who is
that?
that? Who could that be? I don't know. I'm not seeing that. But I saw in the chat box some feedback. I'm going to try and catch that. Yes, so Kathy arrived a bit late but received a lot of food for thought. Thank you for the deep thinking. So you're very welcome. And of course, you can watch the whole thing later on. Any questions that you have? I have one or two things I know I'm going to have to ask, but anything or any comments or something related to things that you've experienced in your teaching, training, coaching that kind of blends with what Analia has been talking about. Anything here? I'm just looking into the chat, but also, can you repeat this last bit, the short term, long term? Yeah, that might be a bit puzzling. What do you mean by that?
The short term is the long term we're late for. So if we want to really be, of course, this is my personal opinion, right? If we want to be of use, if we want to be valuable for the world in the future, we have to start preparing now. The long term is now. We have to work now on the future we want to create.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is what I meant.
Okay, is that clear now? So I think it's clear. All right, great. Okay, copy. One or two things that that I had. If there are any other questions, then do ask them. I'm not seeing anything in the chat box at the moment. Can I come back to the case study with Wes, which was quite a big thing? Corinne is writing here, she has to go, stay safe. Thank you very much. She enjoyed it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. One short question. So he was kind of not learning, but using the language to create the meaning that he wanted. So he was taking a very subjective approach to language in a way, and he was not regarding, but not disregarding either grammar rules, things like that, but he was just not simply applying them. Maybe he was aware of them, but he wasn't applying them at all.
No, he was not even aware.
He's not even aware. Okay, so
and he didn't care. He didn't care.
Yeah.
This is why, let me go back, when the researcher tries to tap into his explicit knowledge, he says things like, I am think means now, I am thinking means later. For him, this is present and future.
Yeah.
Curious.
Yeah. So no focus. Yeah.
No focus, no awareness. There was no noticing. He didn't notice his gaps.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is where language professionals can make a world of a difference, because people like him can communicate. They can get their messages across. In fact, the community said his English is fine. Only at the beginning did he find some issues. So this is where we can help them focus on what they need to focus in order to notice their gaps. When there is gap noticing, then there can be interlanguage stretching and learning.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we clarified that bit. Okay. So basically, if you have the awareness for learning, then you're going to be much more effective and efficient in your learning. Because if you don't have that, then it's just not going to work at all. Yeah. Okay.
But attention is, in my view, is a precursor to awareness. You need to pay attention to become aware. If you don't pay attention, then you won't be, chances are you won't become aware. Things will go by unnoticed.
I don't know who the very clever coach was who said, where energy goes, energy flows.
Where your attention goes, energy flows.
Yes, yeah, I don't remember who that was, but anyway, yeah, I think that's very true. So if you're paying attention, if you're creating awareness towards a certain area, then there's going to be much more energy flowing in that direction. So you're actually going to invest more in that thing, right? So
yes,
the outcome is going to be much better. Yeah. Okay. I'm just wondering if there are any questions or anything. I know, Amy, you arrived quite late, maybe expecting a 7 o'clock start. I don't know what happened here, but we saw a few late joiners here. I think we can wrap up slowly if there are any more questions or anything. Gobby, or we can see Mr. Mohon there, Amy still here. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. There will be a recording. Okay, there was a scheduling problem. Okay. And yeah, basically, very briefly, we're celebrating our 1 year at International Language Coaching Association. So that's fantastic news. And there's still time to join our courses, which we're offering. Foundation started yesterday, and we've got our expansion course where you can move on in all the deepening activities and awareness raising of language coaching if you've already had some basics in coaching, language coaching. And of course, we're offering for business language trainers and communication coaches some more insights and lots of practical work on how to work with your clients who are in a corporate environment. So that's really exciting. And that's starting next week. Yeah, so that's going to be very exciting. And because we're celebrating our 1 year birthday at ILCA, we're offering some discount on the pricing. So if that's something that's exciting for you, then do join us and ask about that. So that's all from us here today. And of course, we've got our monthly Free Talks YouTube channel, and just get in touch with us if you want to. That's always a good thing to do. So thank you very much once again, Analia, for being here. I personally really enjoyed it. I think everyone who was here also enjoyed it. So thank you very much once again.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So I'll be stopping the recording now. Okay.